All right, so this is kind of a classic paper manipulation thing. You'll want to get some coffee filters, and part of the supply list was to have markers. This says they're watercolor markers, but most of the time your markers are water soluble, which means that they're easy to clean up if you get them on places that they shouldn't be. The main thing is you just don't want to use like Sharpies or permanent markers with this. So the water-based markers are the best. So you want to flatten this out, right? One thing that Cal does with his work quite a bit, again, making his own collage materials by painting on papers and just doing experimental things. This occurred to me right away. This is something that I've taught for a long time for various reasons, various uses. It's kind of a magical process. So I have the students color on the coffee filter. We sometimes will talk about things like radial designs, which means like a design that's relative to a circle. Sometimes we talk about doing kind of like tie-dye spiral type, patterns and things like that. But honestly, sometimes the best way to do this is just to start adding color in just different areas of the compositional plane here. When you do that, you want to make sure that you really get a lot of color on there, because we're going to do a wash technique to liberate this color and get it to do just kind of random fun things. So one of the things that students do a lot of times is they want to stop, feel like, oh no, it's too much to like fill this in. So I have them identify any like open white areas that they haven't filled up, and then I tell them, okay, go back, fill it up. Also, because this, oh wow, that blue's nice and rich. Because these do bleed through, you'll want to have them working on another piece of paper. Or like in this case, I have like an old piece of foam core from matting and framing, but it does wash off, right? It's water soluble. So even if you did get some on your counter or wherever you're working, it should come off with some soap and water. And so the goal here is to try to get color in every little spot of this coffee filter as best we can. I will tell you that blue is a fairly dominating color when this happens, and so I'll limit my use of blue. If you notice here, I started with primary colors, right? Now I'm going into secondary colors. I'm being careful not to put my green next to my red, because a lot of times that when it mixes, it'll turn into kind of a brown, which sometimes is cool, right? But sometimes it loses its vibrancy when that happens. So I'm kind of putting it next to some of the yellows and things. Same with violet. Violet and your yellow is going to turn into kind of like an ochre or a brown. So if that's what you're going for, awesome. But I try to keep those colors somewhat separated. So orange and green sometimes get kind of gross together as well, but I don't have a lot of space left, and so I'm just going to kind of go for it, see what happens. Now again, the goal here is to try to get everything filled. And so identify spots like this where maybe you need to add a little bit more, and just go in and kind of spot fill those areas. So what we do with that once you're completed, and you'll see it on both sides when you have enough pigment on there. What we do with that once completed is we take the coffee filter. So this is one that I prepared earlier. We want to lay it flat, and it's best if you do this on like a surface that is easy for this to come off of, because sometimes this will stick down to things. You don't want any glue on the surface at all. But like doing this on like a dinner plate, like a ceramic dinner plate, or a piece of glass or something like that is a really good way to get it to lay flat, because it has a hydrogen bond once you spray it, and it'll stick itself down really well, and it'll end up looking nice and flat. So the whole thing here is like spraying water on that. It activates the color. The color bleeds basically however you laid it down and how it interacts. And sometimes it's cool to put like another just blank coffee filter underneath, because this color will bleed through and leave a pretty beautiful pattern on the other side. Seeing that like violet does not want to spread very well, so I'm adding a little bit more water to that. So this is gonna look pretty cool, like, you know, after it's totally dry. So I'm not gonna mess with it now because it's very fragile. So again, drying time on this, but this is a great way to make your own collage materials. It almost kind of has a tissue paper effect as such. So have fun with that for sure.